welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We're giving you choices and knowledge of knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Oh, by the way, the theme song for this particular edition of Tell Me Your Story really should be Dreams, Dreams, Dreams. Because that's what we're going to talk about today. Your dreams. That's right. But it's also another song. Well, I can't think of a song for this, but another topic title might be that we're going to talk about movies. And you are the star of those movies. They are your dreams. That's right. And we're going to talk about that with our very special guest, who is an expert dream interpreter. And she has joined us here, and she has a website as well by the same name. It's Pamela Cummins. And Pamela, thank you so much for joining us all the way over on the East Coast of the United States, joining us here on the program to share a little bit about what we experience usually when our eyes are closed and we're snoring away.
Well, thank you for having me. And I just want to say, I got a little giggle when you said what we usually experience, because everyone's experience in the dream time is different.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's all about you. You're right. It's about being a star.
Yeah,
Correct.
you are the star of those movies. It's really kind of cool.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, this was an experience that was shared with me, and I'm only going to share a portion of it because it's not my experience, but it was shared with me that this one woman was going through some pretty serious medical issues, and she had just had the latest scan, okay? And they hadn't given her the results yet. It was going to be another 3, 4, 5 days. And it was shared with me that she would she wouldn't wake up. She would sit up in bed screaming in night terrors and so forth, and she couldn't be woken and so forth. As soon as she was given the results of the scan, the report, which was a clean bill of health, they went away. So it's amazing the outer elements that can have an effect on our inner life, so to speak, that dream state.
Right. She was what she was experiencing was sorry about that, was her
All right.
own fear of, of her diagnosis. And she might not have been able to express those feelings during the daytime, but they came out in her dreams and in her night terrors. So yeah, because those feelings have to get out in some manner. You can't hold them in.
And that's one of the things too that we want to talk about, because it is through those dreams that we kind of, we let a lot of stuff go sometimes, as opposed to, or not so much as opposed to, but in addition to, in the waking state, when we express certain emotions that help to release, whether it's crying or, in an appropriate manner of releasing anger and frustration and so forth, including joy and happiness and peace. We have to release that energy too. We can't bottle that up, can we?
No. And well, in a sense, society has taught us to bury our feelings. It's getting a little better, but we've taught to bury our feelings. Men aren't supposed to cry. Women aren't supposed to get angry. Don't do this because you might hurt their feelings. You're inappropriate for showing, that you're disappointed, buckle up, lighten up, calm down. All those things are, in a sense, they're kind of rude, but I guess it's because other people get uncomfortable with the feelings that you have, because you're like a mirror for them. So it triggers their feelings. So if they don't want to feel it, they put you down. And certain times, like certain jobs, when someone's inappropriate or says something, you can't turn around and tell them to, go F themselves or whatever. If you're angry, it's inappropriate. You might feel good for a few minutes, but then you could lose your job, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens is, because we stuff those feelings, and as Louise Hay says, they can cause disease, but in the dream time, there's no denial. So those feelings come up. So the person who you wanted to maybe tell off in the dream, right? You might actually dream that you're a dog barking at them and attacking them, or see a dog barking and attacking them, because it has to come out in some manner.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to say that even though you let the feelings go in the nighttime, you need to do some work in the daytime too, to let them go.
Pamela Cummins is my guest, and we are talking about the work that she does as an expert dream interpreter, spiritual growth coach, psychic, certified Lenormand reader. What is that? I can't pronounce it.
That's what everyone says. It's actually, I think it's from the 16th century. It's 36 cards that have symbols on it, and it's a form of divination, and it's very down to earth, that uses different symbols. And of course, symbolism is a part, it's not all of dream interpretation. So I found it really interesting, and there's different layouts, and it's not tarot, but it's kind of like that, and a lot of people don't know it. It took me about a year to get certified in it, and it's fun. It's wonderful. It's so accurate.
Well, she is also an advanced clinical hypnotherapist, as well as an ordained interfaith spiritualist minister, certified energy healer, and body-mind facilitator. You've also written 7 books. You have some oracle card decks, as well as on your website. You've got a blog and all kinds of other stuff. And that website, again, folks, is PamelaCummins.com. And that is, of course, the spelling PAMELACUMM, as in Mary, IN, as in Nancy, S.com. And we, of course, Pamela, will be linked to your website so people can find out more about the work that you're doing and maybe connect with you. And if they hear something that resonates with them, they contact you, and hey, maybe there's a little support they can get, little guidance and so forth from you. I've heard it said with other dream interpreters, if you will, that the individual is really the only person who can interpret their dreams, because the symbols, I could have a hammer in my dream, you could have a hammer in your dream, but the hammer means something different in mine as opposed to yours. So how do you handle, how do you interpret someone's dreams?
Okay, and that's a good point. And I want to say that some people who have no idea how to interpret their dreams, that's what I help do. And I always give them 2 to 3 possible interpretations, because when they hear the right interpretation, it's kind of like ding, ding, ding. Yeah, that feels right. Although sometimes their denial will kick in, and it might take a couple months later, and they'll be like, oh, you're correct. So, how do I do it? Well, it's kind of hard. One, I use my gut, my intuition. Okay. But 2, I look at the way the symbols, and I always ask their emotions. Okay, because let's use the hammer, right? If you're whistling while you're hammering, that's a good thing. But if you're using it kind of like Thor or something, that's going to mean a total different meaning. So I ask what they're feeling. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but I put it together like a jigsaw puzzle. And I always say, when I give the interpretation, it could mean this, it could be this. And sometimes if they give me a little feedback of what's going on in their life, I don't want a lot, that helps me put it together. Who are the people in the dream? So I know I'm not explaining it correctly, but it's a process. I've also been doing it. I started with my own dreams back like in the early 90s, 1991s. So it's just something that I'm good. Like, I have a knack for putting the pieces of the puzzle, and I get a feeling of the person's energy and their feelings. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but that's kind of how I do it.
Absolutely. No, I understand. Absolutely. We're talking with Pamela Cummins, and we are talking about dreams in that dream state. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about dreams in the waking state as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Pamela Cummins is my guest, and we're talking about the work that she does, especially in dream interpretation. But you have, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of different tools, as you put it, on your tool belt. I have a toolbox. I have this huge, and the toolbox keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's great, you know. I'll tell you what, you never know what you're going to pull out and what you're going to do. But what about does daydreaming come into this category, or is that more of one's daydreaming and they're sort of guiding the dream? It's not the sleeping dreams that
Right.
we are not consciously guiding. We're actually we're in that movie. We've written and we've
Right.
cast it and all of that, but it's there's a difference between night dreaming and daydreaming.
That's correct. Although there is a, and I'm not into it, okay, but it's not my thing, excuse me. But lucid dreaming is where people try to kind of guide and control their dreams, like when they're in it. And that's not for me, and that's not what I teach, because I feel like there's a higher source through your unconscious that is trying to give you a message, and when you dictate it, it doesn't work as well. Okay, where daydreams is kind of like it's it's your ego, but it's also your intuition, you know, so your ego kind of guides it. But I do feel like daydreaming is as important, because daydreaming can be a part of your intuition. Like all of a sudden you're sitting there and you have this thought, oh, why don't I go to the coffee shop? Okay, and then you go to the coffee shop, you're daydreaming about being in there, but you say, let me go, and you go, and then you see somebody you haven't seen in a long time. Daydreaming is also a part of what you desire, what you want to do in life. Okay, does that make sense? Like
Oh yeah,
maybe like women especially, they daydream about being with a partner, okay,
yeah.
and how their life is going to get better. And a partner enhances your life, but so that helps them kind of decide what they want in someone. So daydreaming, I'm going to say daydreaming is a little bit more goal oriented,
Mhm.
using your intuition, while your nighttime dreams use obviously a different language than your daytime. If you speak English or Spanish, it's going to be in that language, while your nighttime dream are symbols in universal language, but it's also your own personal language, you know.
You know, it brings to mind the concept of telepathy, and that my rudimentary understanding of what it might be like is that instead of transmitting words, we will be transmitting images, you know, that people will understand a little bit better, even though, yes, the receiver is going to interpret those images maybe a little differently. But I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into that, but that's a whole nother thing. But it just seems like when, for example, I will have a dream, and I don't remember my dreams like I used to. There are two specifically. One that I had as a very small child, where I was in the kitchen with my mother. She stuck her hand in this jar. It broke, and she cut her hand in some fashion. And we went through that whole drama of making sure she was okay and so forth. The second dream, which it was much more vivid, and I was much older. And to give you a little background, I was born legally blind. So from the age of, well, up until the age of 36, I couldn't drive. So
Mm.
my dream prior to this, my dream was where I was driving this white van on a freeway. One of those white paved, the concrete freeways, it's just pristine, right? And I'm driving past this forest, and the sunlight's streaming through the pine trees, and there's this turnoff into the pine trees, and I drive along into this big meadow, beautiful meadow surrounded by these trees, pristine blue skies, and there's this beautiful stone house with arched windows. And I find myself now in the house, and there's my grandmother on my mother's side.
Mm.
She doesn't say a word. She just comes up to me and she gives me a hug, and I get the impression that what she's telling me is everything's okay. And this was after the passing of my grandmother. And it was hard on a lot of us, but I mean, I loved that woman. She was just so fantastic. Um, it was in 1998, back to reality, when my parents, after I got my driver's license, they owned a white Dodge Caravan and they sold it to me. And as I am driving along the white, pristine freeway of Phoenix, I don't know if it was I-17 or 101 or whatever, the dream came back to me. I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm driving a white van on a white freeway. Wow, this is pretty cool. And I remember that dream, and of course now I try to remind myself as I am out on the roads driving, going, you do realize that 30 years ago, you were not planning on being in this position, and look where you are. This is pretty amazing,
It is.
So those are the two dreams that I really can remember. How do we learn how to remember our dreams if, let's say, in my case, I just don't? I mean, I'll wake up and I'll have an inkling, and if I don't jot something down, it's gone.
Right. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to go back. What you said is that dreams are just mostly images. And I want to say they're more than just images and symbols. They're feelings. Okay. They're like intuition, a knowing. They're actions. Okay. And sometimes they're thoughts. Sometimes you think in your dreams, and sometimes you have conversations. So sometimes there are words, like with your grandma, you felt like everything was going to be okay. And she was kind of showing you that, hey, I'm here, but I want to give you a little, heads up, precognitive dreams, premonition dreams is, of what's coming. All right. Now, how to remember your dreams. All right. It's important. The most important thing, like anything else in life, is intention. You want to remember your dreams. Okay. And you can prepare for that, right? The night before. It's like, I like to say, like, if you're going to go work out, you prepare your clothes. Like my honey, he always puts his like gym bag, always gets his stuff. So in the morning he can just grab it. Okay. So you might have a notepad if you like to write. Some people voice record, or or if you're an artist, draw. Okay. And then before you go to bed, you can write a letter. I will remember my dreams, or visualize yourself, close your eyes, visualize yourself, remembering your dreams. And you get up in the morning and you're writing them down. Okay. Or voice recording, or just go to bed, and say over and over, I will remember my dreams. I will remember my dreams. It's like practice makes perfect. And some people, I always say, give it 90 days. It usually happens before, but it's the intention. And then, as you say, in the morning, okay, because I recorded my dreams for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years until I got a cat. And midnight, this was a long time ago. And I just try, and she's like, yeah, she'd swat at me like, feed me now. So, but by that time I could remember them. Okay. But it's good to record them in some way. And if you're really busy, like you got to get to work, you might just say, like for you, I was driving down the road. My grandma saw me, and I felt like everything was going to be okay. All right. You didn't have to go in, just like a little note. So this way it triggers a memory later on. But the more you do it, have the intention, and the more you record them, it's easier to remember. And there are times in life that you're not going to remember your dreams. If you're going through, you're really busy and you have no time, if you want to not remember your dreams, do drink or drug, okay, which I don't recommend, but that's going to happen. Or sometimes you're just exhausted, like moving or whatever. So, and we can't remember every single dream because we would go nuts. Okay. I mean, seriously. But yeah. And just lastly, I know I'm talking a lot, but like, as you said, there are certain dreams that are really important that you will remember without having to write them down because you're meant to.
Yeah. That one of me driving is obviously one that it's not going away, as well as the one of my mother in our kitchen, my childhood home. And she, cut her hand in this jar it was weird because it just broke. The glass just broke, and then all of a sudden her hand is cut. But it's really interesting. We're talking with Pamela Cummins, and we're talking about the work that she does as a dream interpreter. We're going to get into some of these other areas as well as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is really kind of cool to have somebody on the program to take us down this road. I want to ask you, because you've sort of alluded to this, but I'm going to ask the direct question on this.
Okay.
And that is, how significant are our dreams in comparison to listening to that still small voice, which we have been promoting since September of 2019 during the first sequence of the year of perfect vision, the 2020s, where we'd encourage people to go within, sit still, be quiet in that still, peaceful, calm place, and listen to that still, small voice. Right now, it is the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s. So I don't know if there is a comparison. Maybe there isn't. They are both as vital as the other.
They're both important, okay? And each individual is different, because to me, intuition, quite honestly, is really getting in touch with your psychic self, or if you want to say a power greater than yourself, whatever that is to you, whether it's Jesus or an angel or, an ancestor or whatever. They're both important, and they all both help you tap within to listen to your inner voice. Okay. And dreams are the same thing. They're just done in a different language. And sometimes they're clearer in a sense. And if once you start understanding them, basically they're both intuition and dreams are teaching you about yourself. As you said, you are the star in the movie. And for me personally, and I know some of my other clients, when they got in touch with their dreams and started understanding their dreams, they started having dreams of the future, dreams of those who crossed over, and that helped them get in touch with it came out during the waking time, with their intuition, with their psychic abilities. But they're both important. And that's why, as you said, with the tool belt, I don't just interpret dreams, because people were like, okay, I had this dream, I understand its meaning. Now what do I do with it?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's important. Just like I had this intuition, now what do I do with it? Because if you don't, like, let's say you have an intuition, it's something simple. I need to bring an umbrella. It's going to rain and it's a beautiful day out. There's not a cloud in the sky. Okay. Well, take your umbrella with you, because it might rain, or somebody might try and mug you and you can whack them in the head. You're getting this intuition for a reason. And, in order to start believing in it and trusting it, you need to act out on it. Take the umbrella. Don't go a certain way. Don't take the highway, or don't go back the back road because maybe there's a huge traffic jam, or they're doing construction on a back road and you're going to get delayed. So listen to it, but also listen to your dreams.
I think it's very important. This whole aspect of connecting to, and I consider the dream world as part of this, to the other worlds that we are connected to. Whether we're listening to our intuition, which is connected to what I consider to be the divine world, the dreams are connected to another world that we are connected to, in a matter of speaking, that actually we've created. Because that's where the dreams come through. We've created those dreams, those movies, as I mentioned earlier. And it's just, it's fascinating. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the other work that you do. And you've created some, what are called oracle decks.
Yes.
First of all, what's the difference between an oracle deck and a tarot deck?
That's a great question. Now, a tarot has I think it's 76 to 78 cards, okay? And you have certain amount of the major arcana, and I'm sorry, I can't think of the number right now, which mean different things, okay? Mm-hmm. And then you have the cups, which is water. You have the pentacles or the disc, which is earth. You have the swords, usually it's swords, which is air. And then you have, oh God, why can't I'm sorry, my mind's going blank, but it's for the fire, okay? And there you have basically from 0 to, to the kings, all right? And they all mean a certain things. Where an oracle deck is whatever you want it to be. There's not a certain amount of numbers. It can be 20, 25 to 80. It can be anything that you want it to be. It can be angels. It could be, like I've done, cats. It can be animals, or I'm sorry, it can be fairies. It can be anything. And they usually have a word on it. So it's something that you kind of created, where tarot is more structured.
Okay. But it's you, they're both basic, they're used in essence for the same purpose, and that is to give one guidance.
Correct.
And one of the things that I have found over the years, as I have been listening to and following the promptings, I find that very important, that second step. It's not enough just to listen. You got to follow the promptings. That I've been to individuals who have had this insight, whether, you can call them intuitives or psychics or mediums, whatever you want to call them. And I learned early on I was not going to them for them to give me information that I did not have. It was to confirm, because I wasn't in a place just yet where I fully trusted that still small voice and that information. And so I needed confirmation. I needed a little support. But there's an aspect to it that I think a lot of people forget, or maybe they're not even aware of it, that everything is in motion. And so what Pamela tells me today, or right now, in this moment, in the next moment, could be totally different, because everything's in motion.
Well, you also have free will, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And, people use like for me, like I'll use like tarot or Lenormand or regular cards to bypass my ego, right? And I get information for someone, right? And they have the free will to take it, yes or no. And one of the examples that I like to use is, like, I might say, you're going to meet someone on the intersection of 1st and 7th Street, okay? So they're walking down 1st Street, right? And their soulmate is coming up 7th Street. And their angels are saying, yay, yay, they're finally going to meet. And then over your sudden, you're hot and you're thirsty and sweaty. And I'm like, I really need to get a soda, right? So your free will. So you go in, you get your soda, you're in there for a few minutes. And meanwhile, your soulmate keeps walking, okay? So our free will, and that's a simple, our free will also. But there's also motion, because your soul might say the night before, might have met someone who wasn't appropriate for him, but started dating and didn't walk down 7th Street. So yes, in a sense, there's always motion. Things are happening. You also can accept the message or not. And just like dreams, like people, you might be upset about your current mate about something, and you dream about an ex who you had a really horrible relationship, and you're like, why am I dreaming about that person? Because something your current mate had triggered, a certain thing that happened in the past, so that's why you do it. Just like you might have an intuition about meeting somebody with long, dark, curly hair, but you meet somebody else who's the same with long blonde hair. It's just like a symbolism in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm. We're talking with Pamela Cummins, and PamelaCummins.com is the website, and you are listening to What Else? Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's a pleasure to have Pamela with us here on the program to give us some insights on the work that she does in terms of helping folks. What would you say is your mission statement?
My mission statement is to help accelerate people's personal and spiritual growth. That's what I'm all about, because I know when I do that for me, life gets so much better. So I want their lives to get better.
And in turn, that makes life better for everyone.
Oh, sure.
And it starts to spread. And that's kind of what we do with this program. Even if only one person were, say, listening, that person is going to say, hey, that was pretty cool. And they have a friend and they share that, and that person listens and they may like that too, or certain parts of it. And hey, pretty neat, and so forth. I can tell you as of our conversation, I've been podcasting, posting podcasts up on SoundCloud that is then distributed to the myriad platforms like Spotify and TuneIn Radio and Stitcher and Player FM and all the Amazon Music. And as of our conversation here, after nearly 5 years, starting in January of 2018, 90,700 listens.
Wow.
And I mean, we're 10,000 away from 100,000 listens to the various interviews. And I don't know the exact number. I'm sure there's a way for me to find out through the analytics that we must have 6, 7, 800, maybe even more than that, interviews that are available through the podcasts. We have about 340 video interviews on YouTube. And that's growing too. But I don't know about you. I'm not as concerned, even though the numbers, they sound cool, 90,000, oh boy. I'm not as concerned about the numbers as I am the fact that people are actually listening. People do send comments. 99% of the time, they're very positive comments, very supportive. A matter of fact, one woman just sent a comment having to do with how, I listened to this particular interview and I left inspired. Like, well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to inspire as well as educate and inform. How did you get into this in the first place? Because, I mean, again, you've got a lot of hooks on that belt, that work tool belt, okay, and had to have started somewhere.
Oh, yeah. It started back in 1989, and my life was miserable. I had just gotten out of a really bad relationship. Quite honestly, I used to smoke a lot of pot and I would drink, and that was no longer working. Like the feelings, like what was going, it was no longer, the medicating, self-medication was no longer working. And I knew it was time to change. So I went to therapy. I joined different 12-step groups, and that's how it began. Okay. And like, as far as like the 12-step groups are like, you need a power greater than yourselves. And there were a lot of Christians, and there's nothing wrong with Christianity. Okay. My parents were both Jewish, but we were raised non-religion. And the religion, I liked certain aspects, but that didn't feel right. And it, honestly, reincarnation and different spiritualities, and I'm an interfaith minister, that felt right. And the spiritual aspect felt right. So I started working on my spirituality. And as my life got better, and I took a hypnotherapy course and then all these other courses. And my dreams were a deep part of my healing. That brought out my psychic abilities. And it was just, as my life got better, I wanted to share it with the world. And as you said, make a change to people's lives, one person at a time. So a certain book, like some of my books are more popular than others, a certain book might not be as popular, but when somebody sends me an email and says, wow, for one thing, like I said, ask God to speak through you if you don't, or whatever it is to you, if you're feeling nervous about confronting somebody. And the person said, that helped me so much. That's what counts. Like as you said, the numbers don't count, but it was from work, doctor, heal thyself. Well, Pamela, heal thyself. And then you can be a beacon for other people to heal, and I know how difficult it is to get rid of those negative messages, to feel inspired, to do something, to not take the criticism to heart, all that stuff. It's like, I think it's important to walk the walk, not talk the talk, because when somebody's just talking the talk,
Yeah. Yeah, we do. We absolutely do. There are a lot of people we have come across in the last 10, 20, 30 years in various arenas in our country, let alone around the world, who are just talking. I grew up in broadcasting. I grew up during the heyday of televangelism. I was working for a Christian radio station for 15 years. I was there from 1980 to 95. And as these televangelists began to rail against whatever it was, the first thought that came to my mind was the Shakespearean phrase, "Me dost think thou protesteth too much." And that the more you rail against this particular subject, you're going to get caught up in it. And every single one of them did. Got caught up in that which they were yelling and carrying on about. You know, I don't want to say they should have diversified. I think they should have knocked it off, because I always found it so sad that the church was not for the saints. It was for the sinners. It was for the people who needed the help. You know, if you're whole and you're healed, then help someone else to get there. Let them come in and be supported and be comforted and be, nurtured, if you will. I don't know about you, but I used to, we would produce prayer programs, live call-in prayer programs. And again, I was there for 15 years, and you'd hear the same people year after year after year. And I'm thinking, what is wrong? Why aren't they getting their healing? And then it dawned on me, they're not calling for their healing. They're calling for connection. Talk to us a little bit about the need through all of these different modalities for that connection.
I think when you say about connection, because quite honestly, you can connect to anyone, but how are you going to feel afterwards? Okay. People want to connect to know that they're loved and that they're accepted for them. I mean, for me, that was like one of the main things I wanted from a love partner, was them to accept me for my good points and my bad points. Okay. So that's what I think is really important with connection, to know that, hey, I'm okay just being who I am. Okay, I'm not perfect, but they love me for me. And when you think you feel loved for you, okay, that's when you grow. So I think that's what's really important for connections, and also to know that. And sometimes we need to vent. Okay,
Yeah.
we need to vent to save people. Okay, because it's like, get it out of you. But we need to vent. People are people who are going to say you're wrong. And there are certain causes that, yes, we need to come together. But I think when we get into, like, as you said, with the connection, like, we're right and you're wrong, I mean, obviously there's certain things like murder, rape, bombing people. That's horrible. All right, that I don't recommend doing that. Okay, those things, the certain things. But when it comes to your spiritual beliefs or how you want to live your life, even though I might not agree with it, that's your choice. And it's just like, I find good in every single religion. All right, but I also find not so good. And I think it's when the judgment, and you need to do this. Yeah. Okay, and you're wrong for doing this. No, we're all learning things one day at a time.
One day at a time, exactly. That's one of the reasons, and you've already used the word once already. I have thrown out the word tolerance, or to tolerate. I want to accept people the way they are. I may not like the way you talk, the way you behave, and so forth and so on. That's irrelevant. You are a member of this community because you're a human being. You're a fellow human being who has every right to be here just like I do. That is a hard one for a lot of people to accept, because we are taught and almost trained to have revengeful, envious thoughts of someone else who is better off. And sometimes someone who is not so well off, let's just say, for example, the homeless, and we pass judgment on them. Oh my gosh, what did they do to, and so on and so forth. They must be horrible people because look they're on the street and so forth. It's like, yeah, and that could be you next week because we're all that close. So don't be casting. It's like, he who is without sin may cast the first stone. The running joke on that, of course, is, that Jesus is hit with a stone, and he turns and says, "Mom, cut it out." In any event, we're talking with Pamela Cummins, and PamelaCummins.com is the website. We're going to be linked to her website as well so that you folks can find out more about the work that she's doing. Contact her, connect with her, and she'd be more than happy to work with you in that regard, and maybe help you to better, not only to understand your dreams, but also maybe to start remembering them. Find those ways to do that, as she's already shared with us here on the program. And you're listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and Pamela Cummins is my guest. You have written a number of books. Obviously, one of them, at least one of them, is on dreams. But you've also written a number of books on the whole aspect of relationships, both relationships in general, but love relationships. That obviously is of a real interest, as well as, I don't want to use the word concern for you, but an area that you want to support people in.
It is. I'm a Libra. So Libras are all about relationships. And I've had some really bad ones, and it took a lot of years for me to, I've been in a relationship for over 10 years. And, and me and my honey, it took a long time to find the right one. So it was kind of like my first 3 books were really about love relationships, because that's where I was at the time. And I helped a lot of people with their love relationships. But love relationships, all my themes in my book, it starts with you. Okay. So if let's use an alcoholic. Okay. So if you're an alcoholic, right, you're going to probably attract another alcoholic, or you might attract an abusive, alcoholic, because one of your parents was an abusive alcoholic. So you need to obviously work on that and work on your stuff. So the healthier and the more that you work on yourself, which is a lifetime process, the better kind of people you're going to attract. So even though they're on love relationships, it's also about you and what you don't accept. Because when you said tolerance before, what came up for me is, yeah, you can tolerate people, but that doesn't mean you have to break bread with them and hang out with them.
True.
And you don't have to accept acceptable behavior. You can make boundaries.
Yeah.
So I'm all about love relationship, because that's connection. We all crave that love, but you need to be comfortable within you and self-love yourself to have a better relationship. And even when I see, like, sometimes you see those people and they're arguing and that they don't have a healthy relationship. And I just want to say, but I know that, but for the grace of God go I, because that's how I used to be. All right. And relationships, let me see if I can get my quote right, because relationships are where we humans get our greatest education. Okay. So even though I'm about dream interpretation and spiritual growth, I am definitely about relationships, and not just love relationships, all relationships, because they mirror back what we need to teach. Just like when you saw those evangelists and they were going off and you're like, oh no, they were mirroring off a part of you that you didn't want to be. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And again, words have power. And to me, the word tolerance automatically has a judgment attached to it. I tolerate you. What do you mean you tolerate me? As opposed to, I accept you. Don't have to hang out with you, all right? But I accept you. You are a part of the community, because it takes all of us to make a community. And you're right. That's one of the lessons that I was taught early on, was that whole mirror concept. And especially if it rubs against my grain. It's not that there's something wrong with the other person. It's that they're mirroring something that's going on inside of me. Makes me think of the story in Autobiography of a Yogi, where Paramahansa and his guru, they were sleeping, and the mosquitoes where they were just fierce. And the guru says, go get me a net to put over so that or I should, no, he says, go get yourself a net to put over yourself. He says, well, what about you? He says, I don't need one because they don't bother me, because he wasn't in that consciousness that they were going to be a problem.
Right.
So, once he got to that place, he didn't need a net either. It's rather interesting how those things do manifest in our lives.
And I want to point out too,
Sure.
Richard, they also manifest in our dreams.
Yes.
Okay. There's a Carl Jung theory that everybody in your dream is you. Okay. So take the dream that you had as a child with your mom. Your mom is really you. That's kind of like your inner teacher. Okay. But your mom is also you, where you don't want to get your hand stuck like in the cookie jar because you could get hurt. And that's just, a simple interpretation. But, and maybe the jar is you. That's where you're fragile. Okay. So it's interesting, that theory. But so, if someone's yelling at you, that could be also your anger in a dream.
I had never thought of it that way. That's very interesting when I think about that dream, as well as the other one I shared too. And my grandmother is me, just saying, hey, it's okay. Everything's fine. Matter of fact, shortly after my late sister passed away, I know I'm talking maybe hours after I got the phone call, I started hearing her voice. Just reassuring me, hey, Richard, hey, how you doing? Everything's okay. Everything's good, And one of the most beautiful things that I've shared on this program before, and I'll share it here, that was shared with me by my sisters, and my 3 other sisters, as well as my mother, was that in spite of all of her health issues throughout her entire life, starting with asthma as a kid, she was never bitter. And I'm just going, wow, that's amazing. She had the most beautiful, as her husband shared at the memorial, one of the things that he loved most about her was her laugh, but not just her laugh. The fact that when she laughed, you saw both rows of teeth. That's how big a laugh she had, So, I mean, in spite of all of that, and I still remember the last conversation that I had with her, asked her that really tough question. I learned at the memorial that she was never afraid of the hard questions, the tough questions. And I asked her, are you ready? And she responded, well, yes and no. I'm going, what? I said, well, no, because she didn't want to leave her husband behind to do all of the stuff that he was going to have to do. But from a spiritual standpoint, from where she was coming from, she was ready. She had no fear. She was ready. Can our dreams, I don't want to say predict our future, but are they more along the lines of maybe premonitions of what is, shall we say, possible? Not necessarily will happen, because again, we go back to that whole issue of everything's in motion. But or maybe they're warnings that if you go this way on the fork in the road as opposed to this way, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. They can definitely, because there is no time and space. We're stuck in space and time. Okay. But in the spiritual world, in our dream world, there is no time and space. They're precognitive premonitions. I also call them a heads up dream. Okay. And I'd like to share a dream I had, one of those dreams that this was probably back in like the 90s. Okay. Early to mid 90s. And I had this dream that I was in my grammar school gymnasium and there was a man there, right? Dark hair, beards. Okay. Attractive man. But I felt like he wanted to control me. He was definitely interested in me, as a partner, and he wanted to control me and I just wanted to get away. Okay. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay. And about a month or so later, I met him in a gathering of people. Okay. This doesn't always happen because sometimes it's symbolic. He looked exactly the way he did in the dream. Okay. And I had that same feeling about him. But back then I didn't have any boundaries and I didn't know how to respond when he asked for my number. And I went out with him like once or twice and I got that same feeling and I blew him off. Okay. So yes, that was warning me about him. And again, I had free will. I could have not, you know, I could have continued to go out with him, but it warned me of him. It also, I thought it was interesting about being in the childhood gym because he was triggering like my childhood issues and not really making boundaries, but I learned to make boundaries with him. And later on, I found out, and he wasn't even 30 yet. He had been married and divorced like 3 times.
No.
Okay. Oh yeah. So yeah, that really showed me to listen to your dreams, and premonitions do come true. And sometimes they're not like that. They're more a lot of symbolism and they're kind of hard to figure out. But when you look back on it, you can say, oh yeah. In fact, your dream came true, the one with your grandma. Although personally, intuitively, what I get was your grandmother was visiting you. That was a visitation dream.
Yeah, I got that too when it happened. When I was able to put a context to it. That's what I got too, because I will tell you that when she did pass, I was actually so distraught in the church, and this was a small town in Arizona, Florence, Arizona, and my mother almost had me escorted out of the church. I was so upset. Um, but I wasn't the only one, of course, and because my grandmother was so beloved by everybody. Um, but I've not had that same experience with every single person who has passed. Although I do remember one friend of ours who lived in our home for a while, and this was after I got together with my present wife, and he was living in our home because he had lost the lease on the house across the street from us. So we offered to take him in while he, got things squared away and so forth. And he died in our home. And it was the Friday that I believe that they declared him deceased. And I remember my wife and we were exhausted because we'd been up all night that night before. And I remember waking up, and I can't remember ever being so angry that he left. I mean, I was enraged, I think is the best word. It's amazing how our emotions can be triggered by these kinds of events, isn't it? Because I didn't have that kind of response or even that kind of teary response when my late sister passed away, except at the memorial, which, as I've said many times, was the most beautiful mixture of laughter and tears. They couldn't have done a better job. It was fabulous. Talk to us about this aspect of emotions. I've heard it sort of split up: emotion, energy in motion.
Well, I had a spiritual advisor who used to tell me that feelings aren't facts, but I want to add on, they need to be felt because they give us direction. We need to let them out of our body. And I think it's interesting, like with your grandmother, that was probably one of the first times you experienced loss. Okay. And you loved her so much. And yeah, I'm actually happy that you were so upset about it, because you were really letting out the feelings, right? Your sister, you were sad, but you were also at peace because you knew she lived her life well. Okay. So you were expressing that, and with your friend who died, you got angry because, and this is what I felt energetically, he kind of gave up. Okay. He had more living to do. So those feelings are just part of being human. All right. And I think it's really, we're taught to stuff them, but I think it's really important, as you said, to get through them. All right. And I want to share a story of mine. Okay. Because it really taught me how important feelings were. And maybe people will understand, will not stuff them, if that's okay if I tell you this story. All right.
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, this was a long time ago, and I was at a workshop with people I didn't know. All right, and we were doing this exercise where I was laying on the table, and people held different points of my body to help bring up repressed emotions. Right, I had so much anger, and I'm sitting on the table shaking because I was embarrassed to let this anger out in front of all these people. And I held, and it was hard. I was holding it in. My body's tensing and getting a headache and everything. And finally, because this was an exercise made to let go of their feelings, I didn't know what to do. So I screamed F you in the full words at the top of my lung for about like a minute or two. And I just let it rip, right? And afterwards, I felt so relieved and so much better. And I was, and that really showed me how much work it is to stuff our feelings, and how much easier it is to just go through and release them and not act out on them.
Yeah. I have to say that one of the things that I found so fascinating is watching people, especially older folks, even older than myself. I'm 62. And some people maybe that are not as old as me, but they're still in those senior years, and they're walking around bent over like a question mark. And the first thought that comes to my mind is, what are they still carrying around that they haven't let go of, that has weighted them down so much they're bent over like a question mark?
Right.
And it's so sad because I worked with a gentleman, and this may have been congenital. I don't know. I don't know his medical history, but I was working back in my late teens, early 20s at the VA hospital in Phoenix, and I was working in the X-ray department. And the gentleman that I was working with was, I'll use the term rotund to be kind, but his neck was bent down so far that, it was like a struggle for him to turn side to side to see up.
Mm-hmm.
But he was still moved around and so forth. And again, I have to wonder, when people come into this world, when we talk about that contract that we negotiate and then we sign before we come into this world, or maybe it's karma from a previous lifetime that we're hanging on to. It's just, to me, it's fascinating on the one hand. And I'll also tell you too that I was interviewing a gentleman who had his stomach removed due to cancer. And I said, many people, they kind of take a look at some of their conditions and then they start to ask themselves, well, why did I have that particular condition? What is that a metaphor for? And I was shocked in one sense because it had been a number of years for him. He says, you know what? I never thought about looking at it that way. And then he started to share about his upbringing and the way that food was dealt with as a kid growing up, and I thought, wow. So, I had a real infected gallbladder with a golf ball size gallstone, and I had that thing ripped out a year and a half ago. I joked about it with the doctor. I says, yeah, I won a gold medal in the medical Olympics for the gallbladder clean and jerk. But I was legally blind when I came into this world. I have lost vision in my left eye in the last, I'll say, 10 years. But then again, I never really focused a lot on that eye because it was always my weaker eye. I had a lens implant in my right eye, which has allowed me to drive. I'll be honest with you, I haven't really looked at those from that perspective. It's more along the lines of I just accept that, hey, this is life. It's no big deal. When I was at the Christian station, people wanted to lay hands on me. I said, I appreciate it, but please don't. My purpose in this life is not to be healed. My purpose in this life is to serve. How may I serve you? What can I help you with on your program, et cetera, et cetera? And some would say, well, but Richard, you turned down. And it's like, they can pray for me. I have no problem with that. And God knows where I am. And he can even call collect I'll accept the charges, you know.
Well, when it comes to health,
Hmm.
okay, first dreams, since we're dreams can give you guidance with your health. But back to the topic, I think that it's important not to beat anyone listening, not to beat themselves up if they have some kind of health issue. Because as you said, certain things occur for us to learn or maybe to teach others, like children with cancer. You might say, well, why are they here? Well, most children with cancers have such a loving attitude. So they teach us to have a loving attitude and to accept things the way they are. There are certain times when holding on to your emotions and your issues and stuff can cause health issues. Okay. But it's all a lesson. Do you understand what I mean? Like the guy
Yeah,
who lost his stomach, that's a lesson. The child with cancer, that's a lesson. It's all to teach us something, you know. But it's also a lesson to take care of yourself. Because today on Facebook, I saw somebody saying, "Oh, be careful when you sit down and wrap presents because you might not be able to get up," right? And that just gave me, yeah, well, because if you're not taking care of yourself and you're not flexible, or it might be really hard to get up off the floor. Okay, for me it's not a big deal because I do yoga, and that's like, there's certain things that you can do to take care of your health, and then other things you just got to let go.
yeah,
That's how
yeah.
you were built.
I'm in this. I don't want to call it a play because it's more than that. It's singing, dancing, and all this kind of good stuff here in Santa Barbara. And there are some scenes where you have to kneel. And I said, no, first of all, no, I will not be dancing. Thank you very much. And I won't be jumping around in that respect. I'll stand over here and I can walk around and do this, that, and the other thing. But because my knees are not the greatest. I mean, I had a little work done a few years back, and that one knee is doing fantastic. But I don't have that kind of flexibility like I used to when I bicycled everywhere in Phoenix. And basically, I take that perspective you just said. I said, and this is just the way that it is. There's nothing good or bad, right or wrong about it. It just is what it is. One of the things that I'm wondering about with this whole aspect of, and I will refer to it, actually, you refer to it as dream wisdom. I like that. That's very cool. That's very cool. Dream
Thank you.
wisdom. I talk about the ancient wisdom teachings, all of the various writings from the different faiths and philosophies. We have another form of wisdom that you've been sharing with us here on the program today. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Do you set aside any particular amount of time or a period of time during the day, a particular period of the day, where you will, if you've written it down from the night before, you kind of sit there and you ponder it, you try to evaluate it for yourself in terms of saying, okay, well, this is what I experienced, this is what I felt. You might have had even tastes or smells, kind of thing. I know that some people, they will have both those olfactory as well experiences in the dream state. How about you? Do
Oh,
you?
I actually try and do it in the morning.
Hmm.
I'll go, because I'll remember. I don't write them down anymore. Once in a great while, I will. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm always looking at my dreams. What kind of dream interpreter would I be if I didn't? But yeah, I look at them and I kind of say, like, how's it going to be, to my life? Some of the dreams I did write down was with my cat Merlin, who passed February 2021. I wrote those down because I got a precognitive dreams, and those helped me. But I actually, in my blogs, I actually have, I don't write all my dreams, and I try and teach before telling my dreams, but I have a category, what's Pamela dreaming? A coach helped, who I worked with, came up with that. And I like that. What's Pamela dreaming? Because I don't always share clients' dreams because I have to respect their anonymity, unless someone will say, oh no, share that. Because I'll be like, that would help some, but I share my dreams. But yeah, I take the wisdom of my dreams and I use them for my own life. In fact, you were talking about health dreams. One dream I had, I got a partial hysterectomy, okay, which I was really nervous about doing. When I lived in New Jersey, I didn't trust the doctors there. And I actually, when I lived in Morehead City, North Carolina, I felt comfortable with the doctor. But, when I was waking up for the anesthesia, I had this dream that I was praising the doctor, and I wrote to the editor of how great this doctor was. And when I woke up, I knew that my surgery went well and that I was going to be okay. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely take, my own dream wisdom.
You made me think of something that I think is important for people to always try to remember, and that is, like you said earlier, to have something by your bedside, whether it's written or audible, I should say, that you can go back and review it later. Put down as many details as you can. Have you ever had a dream that you were consciously aware of it while you're dreaming it almost, and you didn't want it to end? I mean, it's like, this is so cool. Even if
Yeah.
there was drama in there, it's like, I got to see how this ends. I got to see if this was
Oh
happily
yeah.
ever after or what. It's kind of, and that's one of the reasons I love movies that have surprise endings. My
Yes.
favorite is Midnight in Paris. And I'm not going to give it away. People can go watch it themselves, but it had an ending I did not expect. And I was so thrilled.
Mm,
I
yeah.
love those kinds of shows and movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Because some shows are like, this is going to happen and this is
Yeah.
going to happen. And, because Chris and I, we watch a lot of Who Done It.
Yeah.
We watch BritBox and Acorn TV, and I'll be like, I bet it's this one. And he's like, no, I don't think. I'm like, I know it's this one, And it's nice to have the twist. But yes, I've had dreams where I haven't wanted to wake up. I've had dreams of like beautiful, like tarot or oracle cards that are actually out of this world that I've never seen. Those are neat. And it's like, I don't want to wake up. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And you're like, why'd you wake me up?
I know. I have had a few of those that I don't remember now, but I do remember that sensation. What the hell? I don't want popcorn now. I want to finish watching. No intermission. What are you doing? And that's the other thing too, is some of the dreams can just be a whole lot of fun. They really
Yes.
can. It's really very cool. We're talking with Pamela Cummins, and we're talking about the work that she does. Primarily, we've been talking about, of course, dream interpretation and that aspect, hypnotherapist as well as a life coach and so forth. And we are very grateful that she has spent so much time with us here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I want to thank you so much, Pamela Cummins, for joining us here on the program, sharing your story. I just have one other question directly to our conversation here, and that is, how has your family um, responded to the work that you started, and you've been growing it and growing it and growing it? Are they real receptive, or are they going, "Oh, she's gone off the deep end again"?
Um, let's see. My father at times, yes and no. Yes and no. But he's my editor now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he does a lot of my editing. He's 86 years old, and he has helped me. Well, he's an English professor, editor, and stuff. But there were times he was really concerned. It was funny when I was doing a lot of readings, and we were going through a recession. And he wasn't crazy about me doing readings, but he read an article in the New York Times that was saying how psychics were making all this money because people were afraid of, how am I going to get through? And, they needed that validation. So that made him feel good. But he's accepting of it now. My sister has mostly accepted it. When I first met Chris, he was kind of like weary of it. But my family, I have a small family, but they accept it. And those who've crossed over obviously accept it. But there have been other people in my life who just did not accept it. But you know what? I'm hearing a song lyric. I just got to be me. I just got to be free. I have to do what's right for me, because you know what? No matter, and this is for everyone out there, no matter what you do, don't worry, somebody's going to criticize it. and tell you not to do it and you should do this. But you're also going to have other people and listen to these people who are going to validate you and support you in that. All right. So listen to that deep intuition and do it. What makes your heart sing, as long as it doesn't, as long as you're not purposely hurting someone, you know?
Exactly.
And thank you so much for having me on the show. I meant to say that. It's been a lot of fun.
It has indeed. I do have 3 final questions I ask all of my guests.
Okay.
All right. But first, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and 9 a.m. on Wednesdays. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. We also podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, many other locations on the internet. And I also want to thank those who have been reposting our interviews. I really do appreciate that. I'm a one-man band. I can't do it all. So I thank you for stepping in and being my person Friday, so to speak. Also want to let you know that we're on YouTube. That's right. I haven't quite hit the 100 subscriber mark yet, but I'm 4 away. So if you'd like to subscribe, that'd be very nice. But as I said before, the numbers, I like the numbers. They're kind of cool. I love patterns, this, that, and the other. But the fact that you're listening, whether you subscribe or not, that's really what is important. And hopefully you'll share this program and others with the people in your community, in your family, and so forth, and friends. We also ask you to spend some time in that still, quiet, peaceful place, that inner space, and listen to that still, small voice during this, the Decade of Perfect Vision. And if you'd like to support the work that we are doing, we have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. When you do go to PayPal and you want to support us financially, they're going to ask you, who are we sending this to? Well, they're going to ask for an email address. The email address, richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. With all of that being said, let's go to our final 3 questions here on the program. Here we are in our 15th year of Tell Me Your Story. And we're going to start with the first of those 3 questions. Who is Pamela Cummins?
And I'm going to say what comes to me. I am a light being, a child of God, goddess, whatever you call. That's what I am.
What is your life's purpose?
Compassion. That's one of my biggest lessons, is to learn compassion. And also, I want to say, to help accelerate people's personal and spiritual growth. But compassion is the biggest lesson for me.
And finally, what was your best day?
Okay, I've had so many, but I'm going to say the day I met Chris. We went for a shrimp burger, right? Yeah, they have shrimp burgers in North Carolina, and he had never heard of them either. And he's been living here for a long time. And oh God, I can't even think. It's Highway 55 now. And we sat there and we met, and we sat there on these hard seats. And we were in there for like 4 to 5 hours just talking, and we just connected and being. That was like one of the greatest days. And I was just like, I hope I hear from him again. And obviously, here it is, 10 years later, we are still together. So yeah, that was one of my best days.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much, Pamela, for joining us here on the program. And I look forward to talking with you again in what will become the new year. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you for having me, Richard.
You are welcome. And thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal and Jeanette, I am listening.